All right, listeners, thank you for joining us again. Here we are in another exciting second part of a two-part series on low-pressure sewers with one of our favorite guests. We got Chris Nedwick from E1, or E1 Corp. And I'm Paul Boyce, CEO and President of PW Grosser, and I want to welcome everyone to the Environmental Echo, and we'll be covering that second half on low-pressure sewers today. My next question, Chris, is you mentioned two of these things separately, Village of Patchogue, right, and also educating the community, right? So we are hearing a lot about the use of the low-pressure sewers in a variety of applications, and obviously you brought up Patchogue, which definitely is at the top of my mind often with this topic. With that said, how has E1 approached educating not only the engineering community, but maybe even the mayor and folks like that? He's been a podcast guest, Mayor Pontieri's a great guy.
I love Mayor Pontieri's podcast. Just incredible.
He's very good. I'd love to get him back also. But how do you go about? You do the seminars with the engineers, but do you get involved with community education once these systems go in?
Yeah, if I could.
Or before?
Yeah, I'll get to the. Yes, thank you for the question. So we do a lot of education when it comes to the engineering community. We'll come to your facility and what we're finding now, Paul, and you've probably seen this in your own firm, is the generational shift has happened. A lot of the engineers that we're talking to now are 3 to 5 years out of school. There's more diversity, which is a fantastic thing. More females, right? It's not just what it once was, right? So we're finding there's more receptivity. The young engineers, firms like PW Grosser that have a tendency to be more cutting edge. They want the best solution, not necessarily what everybody did in the past. So we're finding that the atmosphere is ripe for just educating that this tool is available as a collection method. In terms of the communities, we've done more than a dozen community type events where the public comes in to kind of kick the tires or weigh in on what they think, ask questions. Primarily is what we're there for, to serve them. But we also do a lot of education with contractors, the people that are putting these things in. We educate them on how to install them properly. We're not just going to assume that this contractor is going to do it by the book, right? We actually have to certify them to do it. And there's a direct correlation between the quality of installation and the return on the investment for the owner. In this case, Suffolk County, right? We want to make sure they get the most bang for their buck. If they're getting a grinder pump system, we want to walk hand in hand with that contractor to make sure it's installed properly. We'll also educate the technicians that work on the systems. I was just on the phone with Tom from Suffolk County in your parking lot talking to him about a panel installation and the best way to do it. So, we really, there's no corner out there that we don't get into, and if there's ones that we haven't thought about yet, we'll get to them. But the more that we can educate people about this technology, the better off everybody is, every stakeholder. So we'll do, along with site specific, probably 8 to 10 brown bags in this county alone, not to mention some of the other work that we're doing on the island. And the goals of them, as I said, are just to get to your newer associates, maybe some of your existing associates, and just tell them about how the system works and where it should be implemented.
So, Bryan, any experience with? We've had these guys in our office doing the lunch and learns, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah, no, we've had them out. We were out with them maybe not even a month ago at DPW, kind of doing presentations again to the technical support staff there. On the community side, we've done outreach as part of these projects to the community and kind of telling them what it is, what they're going to see, what to expect, what you should and shouldn't do. Again, and sometimes it takes a lot of hammering home on what you should and shouldn't do. Again, because typically, in the good old days of a cesspool and a septic tank, everything goes in there and it comes out when you pump it out. So unless you block the line on the way in, you don't realize what you're doing. But again, I think that's just something that's continual outreach. I've seen that with working with HOAs before, especially with grease. Don't dump the greasy pot down the sink. Like, it's got to go in the garbage. Like, it's got to go the right way. We've had it with restaurants where they've done the same thing. Oh, I have a grease trap now, and just dumped everything down the floor drains, and that wreaks havoc on what comes downstream. So again, it's a little bit of that continued ongoing education. So once you are connected, I think the county's been giving out some information to the homeowners of what you can or should do and what to do if something does go wrong, kind of thing. Yeah. But like Chris said, the monitoring capabilities that they've got, the county's going to know something went wrong almost instantaneously, and maybe even before the homeowner realizes something's amiss.
That is fantastic. Just hopefully people learn. They live, they learn, and what you shouldn't put down there, what you should and shouldn't touch on these systems too. Yeah, there'll be a panel on your house. You shouldn't tinker with that. You shouldn't be tinkering with the pumps. Leave it to the pros.
Yeah. The county's been great to work with too, and very receptive to those types of events. The presentation that was just mentioned focused on the commercial sector, and there's a tendency out there for people to think of what we do as almost exclusive to residential. So we really talked mostly about commercial applications and where this is used and the versatility that it provides from sewer and commercial connections. And there's we have E1 systems at Brookhaven National Lab. We have commercial installations here in the island and manufacturing facilities and places like that throughout the country. There are complete commercial corridors that are hooked up to E1 systems almost exclusively. We sewer SpaceX, Alcatraz Island, the Hoover Dam. Some of it gets pretty fancy. But when you look around the island, and every time I come here, I think the same thing. People that do what we do know what to look for. Like if you go to Islip Airport or MacArthur, whatever, you don't see the 10-story hotels built up next to them, right? And that's because of a wastewater infrastructure limitation largely. You see a lot of maybe light retail or storage facilities and low water usage type commercial spaces. And, there's literally, there's nothing that we really can't do, really, when you look at it from a 10,000-foot view. There might be individual instances where we say, the flows are too much in this particular area. So, Mr. and Mrs. Engineer, you might want to, do something else here. But when we look around the island, the commercial corridors that we have here can all be low-pressure sewer system, can all be done successfully that way. So I know that there's some plans about maybe getting into that, and more on some of these next projects that are coming up. And, that was just really exciting to look at that and have the opportunity to serve those applications.
Segueing into my next topic, sort of the economic benefits of sewers, right? And how does low-pressure sewer systems, how does that play a part in that transition from, going from those septic or individual sanitary systems to a larger scale? And, where do we go?
Yeah, I think that when the force mains get installed, the connections have a tendency to happen either organically or through regulations, right? And, legislative initiatives, things like that. We've seen, it's been so encouraging to see the political will to get things done in the county. That's, gone through a couple administrations now. And there's an acknowledgement that this problem's out there. And, we have seen low-pressure sewer systems transform economies. And I'll mention there's a town in upstate New York in Saratoga County called Moreau. It's between really Saratoga Springs and Lake George. I don't want to say that it's been a backwater, but it was just typically someplace people drove past unless they needed gasoline. And really about 7 years ago, I think maybe 6 years ago, we went in there. They were working to have a gravity system put in. That's what was planned. And there had been a series of attempts to get it across the finish line, but due to budget constraints and things like that, it just didn't come to fruition. Well, we educated them in a way similar that I just described, that we do with engineers, and it eventually that got switched over to E1 low pressure about 3 years ago now. And since then, New York State Thruway Authority has come in and installed new on-ramps and exit ramps to the thruway. Real estate values have spiked. Businesses are growing, right? There's job creation taking place. And it's all happened overnight, and it all happened really when the wastewater went in. And now there's plans for more expansion, and we've seen these examples play out dozens of times, and the most applicable one here is really Patchogue. We did talk about that already. Yeah. But, that Patchogue is the place that people want to go on a Friday night in many cases. And they've got that bustling downtown district. They have the pressure sewer system. It's really correlated with that. There's waterfront development taking place now, recreational development taking place now. It's all goes back to job creation. You have to have the infrastructure to have the job creation and the investment. So there's a profound impact. And when you see pressure sewer systems connected to some of these commercial corridors, you will see expansion. You'll see that restaurant that's been wanting to add 20 tables. Well, now they don't have the little cesspool in the back of their facility, and they can go up to 5,000 gallons a day or whatever it is. And they will expand, and you will see investment happen. We've seen that over and over again over the course of 5+ decades, and we hope that takes place here as well.
I certainly think it will, and I know we're looking at Sayville, right,
Yep.
as a potential with the county.
No, yeah, we looked at Sable. The downtown is, it's a little sleepier than Patchogue's per se, but I mean,
yeah.
again, things like that. It's letting the small restaurant expand into the space next door. It's maybe getting some housing up, on the second floor. If you do have a second floor up there, even in San Mauritius, it's
what
the
I've
same
heard,
thing.
Bryan. That's one of the biggest fears of the people. They just don't want to see it turn into another borough of New York City.
Well,
We start
correct.
adding floors and
Well, that's it, and it's again, it's finding that responsible balance of development. Not everybody wants Patchogue. You say Patchogue, some people love it, some people are like, don't bring that to my neighborhood.
Yeah.
But I mean, you go into your downtowns, like your Sayville, I'm in San Mauritius. It's you have vacant storefronts every once in a while that sit there for years, and no one comes into them. And again, like Chris said, it's all wastewater related. It largely 9 times out of 10, that's
Absolutely.
the problem. It's not parking. It's not always the size. It's just you can't put the use in there, and then it just sits. And rather than have that, if we had sewers there, you could get somebody in it. You could get a doctor in there instead of a dry retail store. I mean, you could make something out of it. And again, we're not looking to bulldoze every main street downtown and come back in with 10-story buildings, but it does provide some growth and some economic viability to areas that otherwise may need it.
And you also hear from the folks at the public meetings, Paul, as you mentioned,
oh yeah,
that say, I have $1 million house and I can't flush the toilet when the tide comes in, right? So that goes back to that term that Bryan used, balance. How do you get? But there is a point that we make as part of our value proposition that's a little bit esoteric, but you can actually size the pipe, and it's so predictable that you can size the pipe in such a way that can limit, right? You can say, okay, it's just going to be a 3-inch line. That means only X amount of homes or X amount of flow is going to be able to go through it. So, that's something that occasionally an engineer will bring up and say, well, overdevelopment became a concern, so we only want to keep the pipe this size. So it provides flexibility that way as well.
All right. Well, we're getting close to the end here. All right. We don't want to keep everyone all morning, but always have to bring this up, and this is probably a constant theme almost on every one of our podcasts, maybe with the exception of some geothermal stuff, but water quality, absolutely of utmost importance on Long Island. We understand the need for the clean groundwater, the surface water, to promote a healthy environment and a healthy economy. How are low pressure sewers helping to improve water quality?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we do. We're keeping those pollutants out of the groundwater and out of the surface water. I think first and foremost, the vast majority of cases in this country where there's algae blooms, where there's water species die-offs, right? Like it's happened in the Great South Bay, unfortunately, right? When I was a kid, you could go down there and there were, guys selling clams on the roadside. You just don't see that anymore, right? So just by introducing a sanitary system and eliminating, enormous concentrations of cesspools really is what we have here, right? I mean, I think septic tanks are the exception. It's mostly cesspools. And the older ones were just, precast concrete, and just stuff goes in there and then leaches out eventually. There's no digestion really taking place with the effluent. And so we're protecting water quality by by increasing the flexibility and opportunity to install sanitary in more places. And, for counties like Suffolk County, even Nassau County, where they have pockets of cesspools still, you get the most bang for your buck by going in this direction. And just the more of these cesspools and septic tanks we can eliminate, the better the water quality is eventually going to be. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
So that is a running theme here with PW Grosser.
Right.
Yeah.
And the environmental echo.
Yeah. And and it's just again, it's an exciting time to see actual progress taking place, and people thinking in terms of the future and protecting water quality. Really, we're doing this for our grandkids and our kids, right? And
well, you said it. We did the study from sunrise to the bay. It takes decades for water to move.
Right.
It's not a quick process.
Right, but it's that surface water contamination that Bryan brought up that's more of a short-term impact that leads to problems.
Yeah, and that's again, I think some of the way the county approached some of these projects is, are are the projects in, key tributary areas like Oakdale is right on the water, right on the Kennequot River. I mean, those are priority number one. We didn't start in the center of the island and work our way out. You're starting where that instead of decades, it's minutes before it hits the groundwater or the surface water. And like Chris said,
it's in the bay, right?
Yeah, most of most of even the local algae blooms can come back to wastewater derived issues. So I think that is kind of like, the number one enemy at the county here at the moment for, water quality is that. We've got some other things. And again, even having sewers in there would help with emerging contaminants to some extent. It gets them to a localized, treatment plant. Some of them will break down and could be maybe further treated later on as the technology arrives. But it's better than having individual
spread
septic
out
systems
everywhere,
all over the place.
Yep.
So.
100% agree.
And we're, some of the numbers that were discussed here are significant in terms of potential connections. I mean, we're scaling out to meet and exceed market demand. We're in the midst of a $15 million capital improvement project right now at our facility in Niskayuna, New York. The supply pipeline for us to this market is pretty tight, and we're increasing throughput at the plant, improving safety and creating efficiencies. So. We're never going to be in a position where we can't deliver to meet the needs here, and we're putting our money where our mouth is, so to speak, on that, and creating jobs in New York in the process. So, but I do want to say again, these podcasts are fantastic. It's just it's a great dialogue, and it's really exciting to be part of it. And we hope to have the invitation to come back at some point in the future.
It's an open door, my friend.
Back to you guys.
But before we wrap up, any last thoughts? Anything we didn't cover that you think is important to mention today, Chris?
I think a very comprehensive discussion. We just appreciate what you guys do, and we're going to continue to stay active here and be involved. And there's a lifetime worth of work to do.
When we said, we're 5,500
right.
and there's like 750,000 houses
right.
or something,
right.
we got a long way to go.
Yeah. But it's also, I would like to say too, that we've been increasing our activity with regulatory agencies like DPW, Department of Health, and others.
Absolutely.
To help them through their journey, as they look at all this stuff and make good decisions on behalf of taxpayers. That's really what this is all about. So we work with them as well, and we'll continue to do that. And it's just great to be part of the discussion today, guys.
Bryan, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Thanks.
All right, great. Well, then I just want to thank our guest, Chris.
Thank you.
From E1 or E1 Corp, and our friends at E1 for allowing Chris to come down and spend an hour or two with us doing this podcast. As always, been a great topic. Bryan, thank you for your input as always. But I do also want to thank our listeners and viewers, for you guys that are tuning in and listening. I appreciate it. We appreciate it at PW Grocer. This is the Environmental Echo. Again, I'm Paul Boyce, the CEO and president of the firm and the host of the podcast. And if you guys want to reach out to us in any shape, form, or manner, the best way to do that is through our website, which is www.pwgrocer.com/podcast. Thank you for joining us on this episode of PWGC's Environmental Echo. You can download and listen to this episode on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or by visiting our website, www.pwgrocer.com/podcast. For more content like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode.